A Scrum team has three accountabilities: the product owner, the Scrum Master, and developers. Collectively, they form the Scrum team, a cross-functional group of people, typically less than 10 in size, committed to achieving product value. Imagine them like a three-legged stool, with each of those legs being equal length. There is no hierarchy between them. No one accountability is more important than another. Importantly though, they each stand accountable for something different. If any of the legs were to fail, the value sat on the top of the stool would fall down. That's a nice way to imagine how interlinked and interwoven the three accountabilities on a Scrum team are. It's not to say that each of these accountabilities separately isn't important. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. They each fulfill something that is a vital part of delivering value to the stakeholders. A simple summary might be that the product owner is accountable for maximizing product value, the developers are accountable for the quality of and creating the increment, and the Scrum Master is accountable for the effectiveness of the Scrum process. You'll notice that I keep using the word accountability and not role. I just want to take a moment to explain the differences between those two terms. A role is a job title. You could have been hired as a line manager, a software engineer, a hardware specialist, or a marketing manager. Your role doesn't matter in a Scrum team. Your accountability, though, is a series of tasks and actions that you own. They are instrumental to delivering product value. Let's take a moment to try a short activity. As I've said, there are three accountabilities in the Scrum team: the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developers. I want you to take a minute to write a list of the types of activity you think each of those accountabilities might fulfill during a working week. Pause the video now, and when you come back, we'll review each accountability in detail and see if anything on your list was correct. We're going to start with the product owner. The product owner is one person, not a committee. This point is really important because where you have multiple people making a decision about product value and what to work on next, you create multiple sources of truth and therefore confusion amongst the Scrum team. If there were multiple, which product owner is the most important? It just gets messy. In simple language, the product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product. Each product owner has their own unique way of doing this. However, there are four things that the product owner is accountable for as per the Scrum Guide. Firstly, developing and communicating the single product goal, creating the inspiration and direction for the work of the Scrum team. Secondly, engaging with stakeholders and users of the product to identify their requirements and then clearly creating and expressing items as product backlog items. The product owner should be the most knowledgeable person about the product backlog and be able to help the developers refine and create clarity for what is needed on each item. Thirdly, the product owner is accountable for ordering those product backlog items in the product backlog. The decisions they make are transparent through the ordering of the product backlog items. And finally, fourthly, they are accountable for ensuring that the product backlog is transparent, visible, and perhaps most importantly, understood by those who will be turning the product backlog items into a valuable increment of product. Importantly, the responsibility of carrying out these accountabilities may be delegated. However, the accountability must always remain with the product owner. For example, sometimes it is relevant for a developer to create a product backlog item. That's great, and in many cases to be encouraged, but the product owner will always be accountable for what that developer has created. To use an analogy, a parent may delegate the care of a child to a babysitter, but the parent is still accountable for the safety of that child at all times. Referring to something that I said earlier, the product owner is one person, no matter how big the product is, and it is fundamental to the success of the product owner that his or her actions and decisions are respected. Sometimes they will need to make tough decisions that won't make everyone happy, but we always trust that the product owner is acting in the best faith for the product. If anybody wants to influence the product backlog, they need to try and convince the product owner. The second accountability in a Scrum team is the Scrum Master. He or she is accountable for establishing Scrum as per the Scrum Guide. That doesn't mean they should prevent and restrict the Scrum team from experimenting. However, they help the team to understand the benefits and purpose of each part of the Scrum framework from the perspective of theory and practice. They do this to both the Scrum team itself and also to the wider organization. A lovely phrase when it comes to describing the accountability of a Scrum Master is that they are true leaders who serve the Scrum team and the wider organization. In a previous video, I mentioned that there is no hierarchy in a Scrum team. A true leader does not mean a boss. Now, the Scrum Master serves different stakeholders of Scrum in different ways. At the immediate Scrum team level, they help by coaching in self-management, how to create high-value increments, causing the removal of impediments, and ensuring that Scrum events take place and are positive and purposeful. The Scrum Master is commonly seen as a coach, and that is certainly one of the positive choices a Scrum Master can take. I would encourage you to pause this video at this point and read Barry Overeem's brilliant white paper entitled The 6 Stances of a Scrum Master. It's really short and well worth reading. The Scrum Master also serves the product owner by helping them to find techniques to do many things, including product backlog management, making product backlog items transparent, and improving their facilitation skills with stakeholders. All of this education is one way the Scrum Master can support the product owner. And finally, the Scrum Master also serves the organization through many activities, including improving relationships between stakeholders and Scrum teams, planning and advising the Scrum implementation within the organization, and helping employees and stakeholders enact an empirical approach for complex work. You will see a pervading idea throughout all of the ideas I have described, the way in which a Scrum Master serves at different levels. The Scrum Master is not just working within the team itself. In order for them to improve the effectiveness of Scrum and fulfill the accountability for establishing effective Scrum, they need to look beyond the immediate Scrum team. And last but by no means least is the developer's accountability. They are the people who collaborate through sprints to produce one or more usable increments. We often describe the developers as being cross-functional, that there is no such thing as a tester, a business analyst, a document writer, etc. Collectively, they are all accountable for developing the product, and therefore we call them developers. That doesn't mean to say, though, that certain developers don't have specific skill sets, as in almost all cases they do. However, by segregating due to role and skill set, there is often a creation of a "this isn't my work" mentality, and that is not how developers work collaboratively together. They are each equally accountable for the achievement of the sprint goal, even if it is outside of their immediate skill set. The developers have 4 key accountabilities within the Scrum framework. The first of which is that during sprint planning and throughout the sprint, they are accountable for creating a plan to meet the sprint goal. This is called the sprint backlog. Secondly, they commit to conforming to a definition of done. They take part in creating it, they adhere to it, and instill quality in the increment by using it. Thirdly, during the daily Scrum or at any reasonable point, they are accountable for adapting their plan each day to increase their chances of meeting the sprint goal. And finally, they hold each other accountable as professionals. Something that I've often seen, particularly when it comes to the developers, is that it is not their job to become involved in engaging stakeholders. This is simply not the case. The developers are accountable, as I've said before, for creating any aspect of a usable increment. In order to meet that accountability, they must be involved in all of the Scrum events and get to know their customer community. So those are the 3 accountabilities of a Scrum team. They are fundamentally a small team of people. There are no sub-teams, but they are a cohesive unit of professionals focused on one strategic objective at a time. Importantly, they are described as self-managing, in that they decide who does what, when, and how. Collectively, the Scrum team itself holds the accountability for creating the valuable, useful increment every sprint. They complete all product-specific activities, demonstrating an end-to-end delivery of value. The key takeaway from this video is that there are 3 accountabilities in a Scrum team, and they work together to produce a valuable increment. If any one of the 3 accountabilities isn't being fulfilled, value will suffer, and consequently, the product itself will become less stable and less valuable.